everybody to Learning Monday, right? Yeah, hope everybody had a good weekend. Yes?
Yes, it's great.
Excellent, excellent. Good to see you all back again. We were off on Friday. We are going to be changing our schedule from a daily routine to a Monday and Friday routine. So Anil will update you. Today is Learning Mondays, and so we do have a special speaker with us, Alexander Edwards, who is president of Strategic Vision and a good friend of mine and my partner in Strategic Vision India, who will be talking about a very apt topic. We have been seeing very disturbing scenes around the United States of a lot of unrest. And Strategic Vision actually did some COVID research about a month back in the early phases of the COVID pandemic to see how people were reacting primarily to car biobehavior, but they had a lot of other psychological aspects that they studied. And I think they came up with some findings which I found very, very useful right in the beginning, and we were talking about it. And when I layered that on top of everything going on yesterday, I think their findings are pretty apt at this time. They probably are good talking points for some leaders to take from there. There are some good talking points for leaders to take from there. So we are looking forward to learning about that study that they did on COVID-19 and bioresearch with Alexander Edwards. That will start at about 4:15. So Alexander, thank you very much for making Salt Lake City there. Truly appreciate it. First off, we have our executive director, Anil Ramaneni, who's going to give us the state of TiE, and he's also going to walk us through upcoming agenda, right, Anil? Because Anshuman is not here. So Anil, it's all yours.
Hello, welcome to Monday's TiE SoCal Community Connect, number 35. And thank you for joining.
We've been online for 35 episodes, huh? That's
yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
And thank you for joining.
Thank you for all your support, man. Anil and Anshuman, you guys are making this happen, so appreciate it.
More to come, right? More to come.
Absolutely.
And just coming up on Wednesday, we have a webinar happening at 6:30 p.m. It is the use of AI and imaging in the post-COVID world. And that's the discussion, the topics. So we're going to be on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. webinar.
Right.
And that's from the webinar. And going, I think, forward, we'll be doing Mondays and Fridays on TiE SoCal Community Connect. And, we are going to be talking about the topics and stuff with discussion will be there. So today is going to be learning. Friday will be something, Ravi and the team is coming up, with the magic, whatever Ravi does. Okay.
No. All of us do. So all three of us do. And I think we are looking at a couple of topics also, not only for special speakers, but also instead of repurposing Friday into perhaps a startup, perhaps entrepreneurship. We will see. Okay. We are looking forward to your input. Just like Balaji gave us the idea of some good speakers. We're always here looking for good speakers, and we're looking forward to that. Anil, you also should mention the TiE Women's series, right? That's coming up on June 3rd. That is being led by Smita Bagla, right? June 3rd at 9 o'clock, according to the banner there.
Yes.
Okay, that is at 9 o'clock, and that requires registration, right?
Yeah.
Smita Bagla is leading up the TiE Women's, I'm just reading this out, TiE Global Women's Initiative, I think, and she's talking to Patty White from Hemex Health, correct? On 4 strategies for winning during challenging times, right?
Also, we have another one coming up on Sri Ravi Shankar, I think,
That's right.
on June 4th.
That's correct.
And
that's
they're all Smita Bagla's this Women's Series event, and this both are on social media, on TiE SoCal group, social media.
Fantastic.
So looking forward to a great connecting.
Yeah,
Last
yeah.
time there was a lot of attendance for
Right,
when Sadhguru was on.
right.
More than 10,000 people joined. So,
Correct. Right. And we are looking forward to that. So very, very busy times coming up. Um, so hello to the gallery. So next up, we say hi to the gallery very quickly for a few minutes. And then we end up with, and then I'm going to introduce my special speaker. So I'll start with Dhawal here, and then Balaji, and then Neeta, and then Pankaj. So Dhawal, what's going on, man? How are you doing? Had a good weekend?
Yeah, things are good. Had a pretty good weekend. Went to the beach, but all we did was just walk on the boardwalk because there were way too many people on the beach. But yeah, good weekend. Excited to sort of get back to work. I'm pretty upset about these riots though. So that was sort of the fly in the ointment. But um, I'm sure we'll get through it, and
Yeah, I
good
was
times
telling
will
you,
come
I
back.
was telling you, I was a little upset yesterday, and then went and clubbed 100 golf balls, and I got my energy out on them. So I really was, and then I watched. I'll come to that when I introduce our speaker here. But yes, I took it out on a few golf balls.
Yeah,
So
so
I
I'm
think
looking forward to this speaker and
absolutely, Alexander is
this
fantastic.
discussion.
He's going to shed a lot of good light on it. Balaji, what's going on, man? How are you doing, sir?
I started going to my driving range since last week.
How many
I,
yards are you?
I think I told you I'm a member
Yeah,
at
you did.
San Joaquin. I pay $44 every day. They give one large bucket. And today my session is at 6:15, but I got an email telling 7 o'clock they are shutting down the golf range because Costa Mesa has got a curfew at 7 o'clock.
Correct.
Anyway, probably I will take a small bucket, hit and come back.
Yeah. But don't leave us early, huh? 5 o'clock at least. Okay. Thank you for joining us. And hopefully we can all join you for the beer sometime pretty soon. Markets were good today? Markets up or down?
yes, they're up.
Market is up, man.
Market is up, huh? Wow.
No matter what happens, it's market
coming up. It is absolutely, wow, that's very weird. I guess
stay invested, man. Stay invested. You'll come out.
I guess fueled by Tesla's Ponzi scheme, but that's okay.
What?
Okay.
How could you say that?
That's okay, man.
Nothing you tell him.
We are being recorded on Facebook Live, and Alexander will immediately correct me if I say anything bad about Tesla. So I'm a Ford and Hyundai guy, so I bleed blue. Bleed blue gasoline, if you may. Neeta, how are you doing? Good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just really upset about the looting. So
I know. Hopefully everybody is safe. I hope, by the way, if you guys are this thing, you should go and tune into Kunal, Horseplay. You remember Horseplay, right? Manmohan's son. He went and did a fantastic he went out for 45 minutes and did a video and a new song on it. So check out his YouTube channel, give him a like. They are our kid, they are friends of they are kids, they're Manmohan's friend, kids. They're the next generation coming up. All the encouragement that we can give to them will be very, very appreciated, I'm sure. So read his essay, read his song. He's done some good work on it, and he has some good opinions on it. So I would bleep up a whole bunch, but that's okay. Other than that, it's an awesome message. I really would. So I think the guy has a lot of energy, and he's done some amazing work. Check it out. Give him a like. It's on YouTube. Just Google Horseplay. Okay. Pankaj, you're up next, man. How are you doing, sir? Welcome.
Good. Yes, just like everyone else, a little upset about what's going on. I like to keep a neutral view, so I don't think one side or the other is correct in what's going on, and certainly hope that there will be some sort of solution. I see a lot of the major basketball players like Michael Jordan, and they're also now getting in on this, which I don't like, but hopefully down the road, we're going to see something good out of this.
Michael Jordan has a political opinion, finally? I mean, come on.
Not a political opinion, but about the death of Mr. Floyd.
Yeah.
Hey, don't get it, Ravi. Okay.
I am a Detroit Pistons and then I'm a
We'll send you
Lakers
back to
fan. So
Detroit.
yeah. I'm a Pistons.
We'll have to send you back to Detroit.
Anti-Jordanite. I think Kobe was much better. I actually did 3 things other than this to get myself. So we'll introduce our speaker in a minute, but I'll just talk about the thing yesterday. So I was, as you all are, watching TV, and then I was seeing all these disturbing scenes. And I was actually I watched the 3 morning shows in the morning by George Stephanopoulos, the one that's led by the Fox guy also, and the one on Meet the Press. And I was wondering, how do you solve this, right? I'm a problem solver. I like solving problems. And at the back of my mind was some research done by this incredible firm called Strategic Vision. Their president is with us today, Alexander Edwards, and he's going to talk a lot more about their research. But they do a lot of market research. They are a market research firm based in San Diego, California, with an office that is partnering with me in India. And they provide insights on how and why customers make decisions. And they use, in their market research, they use this methodology, which is based on, their insights are based on value-centered psychology to predict and maximize customer advocacy, conquest, and loyalty. About 35 or 40 years back, Dr. Edwards, the founder of Strategic Vision, created what is called an Edwards commitment scale, which allows in surveys and stuff like that to get survey and feedback information. And so coming back to this COVID experience, early on in COVID, they have been doing research on a regular basis, asking their respondents what their behavior is, what the psychology is, what are they thinking about? And Alexander is going to talk a lot more about it. But what I found yesterday to be useful is one of the things that very early on, Alexander was telling me, Alexander and Alex Hare were telling me that they were finding this gap in feedback between local and national, right? And that's what struck me yesterday. So we are going to talk a lot about it. How is buyer behavior changing? What are people thinking about in this era of COVID-19? How has coronavirus altered consumer psychology, decision-making, and behavior, and specifically with respect to government response on consumer psychology? That's what he's going to talk about. We are going to have a conversation with him. So Alexander, I hope your microphone is on. If you unmute, press the unmute button out there. How are you doing, Alexander? Thank you for making time at this late hour today.
Well, of course, and glad to be with you. Really appreciate some of the comments I heard about just sort of where things are at and how people hope that they end quickly. It's very interesting. I have a daughter who recently graduated from UC Berkeley. And her focus was political science, policy, and community organization. So as you might guess, all of this is very important to her. And, you know, not to make light of or even focus in on the perception, but last night we talked for about 2 hours and there were clearly some tears listening to this young woman in her 20s talk about what's going on in the nation that she loves, as someone who's been studying political science, who wants to make sure reform is done correctly. And she said something that I felt was both insightful for us, but also shows a little bit of where the youth are coming from. And she used the words, in this unprecedented time, we have all of these things happening all at once, and it's never been like this. And I said, well, sweetheart, had you been alive, you know, in the late 60s to early 70s with civil rights and Vietnam War and all other sorts of things, it isn't, you know, have we seen this before in an unprecedented way, but we have seen this before. And if we're smart, we should find a way out of this. And there's some things I can show today about how to do that. Now, before I go any further, I realized I am using a new headset, and I want to make sure that you can hear me clearly.
Very, very clearly, Alexander. Absolutely. And whatever head, yeah, absolutely. I've been on prior calls. So yes, you're very clear, by the way.
Perfect. And then on a fun note, Ravi, you'll like this because you've not seen me in a video conference for quite some time. I've actually ordered a new computer that will have a camera on it. So you will be able to see me probably in about 3 weeks when it finally gets delivered. So.
Oh, darn. None of that cowboy picture on yours anymore?
No.
Picture with the hat?
If you're in a Google Hangout, yes, you'll see a picture of me as Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead.
There you go.
That's just a commentary on the times that we're living in. But anyway, so I am prepared to speak on or share whatever would be helpful for you today.
Excellent, Alexander. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. So I'll go through a couple of questions. So tell us a little bit more. I know I gave a little bit of an introduction, Alexander, about strategic vision and value-centered psychology. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I can certainly do that. My last question is, would you like me to share a screen?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. If you have something, go ahead and share it. The way to do it, I think you should have, there you go.
Believe it or not, I have worked a computer before. So,
Alexander,
yes.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do we ask the questions at the end of your thing, or do we interject in between?
Interject. I mean, this is a conversation. This is not a presentation.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Unless Ravi tells me otherwise, but otherwise.
We have a lot of people with questions. We are trying to get some messaging out first, and then we last. So Anil, if you don't mind, let us keep it to the last 15 minutes. Otherwise, just type it in the chat box, and I'll try to ask him. But he does not. Alexander is a free-flowing kind of a person, but I just want to. I have a goal for this also. So if you don't mind, type it in the chat button, and later on we'll have ample amount for questions and answers.
So exactly the opposite of what I just said.
Sorry,
there
Alexander.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, Alexander. If you don't mind, we'd like to. I just want to make sure I have a little bit of a handle on this one. Okay?
It's perfectly fine, and I have to be wrong at least once a presentation. So that's the one time I'm wrong. We can move forward. I'll be perfect the rest of the way.
Our guest speaker is more than willing to do it. When we set up when we are trying to make the rules is when I really appreciate that, Alexander. So good.
So
about strategic vision. Let's go back to this. Absolutely.
About strategic vision, as Ravi said earlier, our main focus is to understand how and why consumers make decisions. We've been doing this business since the early 70s. In fact, my first presentation I made was at the World Trade Center in 1977. And actually, Ravi, I owe you a couple pictures of what that looks like because it was quite amazing. So we've been doing this for some time. Even back then, we were using computers, machine learning, and algorithms that we were writing to be able to predict, based on what people would say in natural, free-flowing communication, what their behavior would then be based on the attributes and benefits from the products and services they were experiencing, and why they valued that and the imagery it created. From that, value-centered psychology emerged. Not that we created this, but it was the metaphor from which to describe how people were making decisions globally and across product categories, whether it was a paper plate for a picnic to which doctor to choose to what automobile to purchase, as well as in politics, which candidate or party to be affiliated with. Always starts with security. People have to feel that they are secure with the product or service, that they trust it, that it's reliable. If that's there, then they can experience freedom. Freedom is expressing one's individuality all the way to, I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, worry-free and hassle-free. That leads to esteem, which could be both proud of the things that you're doing, all the way to, this is fun, this is exciting. That leads to balance or having one's needs met. Experiencing the refinement of a product or experience, all the way to the top, which is love. If you have a customer say, I love this political figure. I love this vehicle. I love this brand. What they're really telling you is that all the other areas of the values and emotions for that consumer have been met. It's not that love is better or more important than the values below it. It's just you can't have the higher things like esteem, fun, excitement, love without security being met. I usually use a comparison to a roller coaster. Nobody goes to an amusement park to ride the safest roller coaster. They're looking for fun and exciting roller coasters. But if they felt the roller coaster was not safe and secure, they would never get on that because that fun and excitement would turn to terror. And so that's what we at Strategic Vision do. We do a lot of work in automotive, but we also do a lot of work, political, pharmaceutical, etc. There's my 3-minute pitch there.
Awesome. That was very helpful. By the way, it has been a pleasure to, I have known Alexander and Strategic Vision. We have used them at Hyundai for since 2003. Their insights are very, very valuable, and especially their psychology-based insights are tremendously impressive and valuable. We used it very actively at Hyundai, and over the past couple of years, it has been my pleasure to be investing in Strategic Vision to take them to India, right? So we are officially there. We are in India. We have taken Strategic Vision to India, and we are working there. We are representing them in the India market, so which is very exciting. Alexander, we are seeing your email there, so you better stop sharing your screen. Hello, Honda, by the way.
Yes, I got a notice on my phone saying it came down. I went, okay, I'll take care of that. But yes, see my Honda stuff. It's all good.
No, I'm just kidding.
We work with everybody.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yes, you do, and give tremendous insights, by the way. So tell us a little bit about, Alexander, let's go into the COVID research. Talk to us about the research you did around COVID, and just tell us about the methodology and some of the highlights that you found there in that.
Sounds terrific. So what we did is we started back in March and we took it all the way through April. And what we had done was every single week we would check in with all of our automotive partners, government agencies, parts suppliers, etc. And we said, what do you need to know in order to successfully come out of this COVID world that we found ourselves in? And through a 3-week process where we presented some information, got some information back from the agencies and the OEMs, presented some information, got some feedback, went back, etc. This is going to be a small grouping of what that data looked like. Effectively, it was a 3-minute survey, value-centered survey, to really understand what were the key aspects of both vehicle owners, people who purchased in March or April during the COVID pandemic, or intenders, people who had purchased about 5 to 6, 7 years ago and would likely be in market at this time. We wanted to know, are they still in market considering that COVID's happening around us? We discovered that we had a really good representation of the new vehicle buying population, and we learned quite a few really great things. Would you like me to take us through the COVID, or should I jump directly into the political aspect? Because
give us COVID highlights, and then we'll do political highlights in a bit.
COVID highlights, just a couple of things. The first is right here. In asking people, there were 2 different waves of the data that we did, early April and late April. And what you can see is the data is very similar, but in late April, as we got longer and longer into the COVID pandemic, you could see that the middle of the road sort of starts to disappear. Number one is that early on, about a quarter of all new vehicle intenders were saying, I'm out. I may never buy another vehicle again. I might rely on used, I might rely on the vehicles I have, etc. you could see that a good portion of these guys also, 67 said their percent said they were going to be postponing when they buy a vehicle. And then of the people who were influenced by COVID, 6% said they were going to shop sooner. If we go to the last half, or wave 2, we can see that those people that were just postponing for a little bit became smaller, and a few people got into the I'm going to start shopping sooner because there were some great deals during the COVID pandemic that people wanted to take advantage of. As well as there are some people that have said, wow, it's been 2 months, I've lost my job, I'm not getting any money, I don't know where things are going, I may be out of the new vehicle market literally forever. And you could see just from this one graph that there's a lot of concerns when it comes to security.
Wow, that's an increase from 27% to 36%, right, Alexandra?
27 to 36, that's correct.
It
is significant. Yes.
Right? Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Something to note is that truck buyers and women buyers in the US are actually more resistant to having their decisions impacted by COVID. People who buy trucks have things they have to do, and when it comes time to get it, they go out and do it. Women in the US, they have jobs that are essential, and or they are taking care of a family, and they have things to do, and whether or not it's the COVID pandemic or something else, they have to take care of things and get things done. And we found that both truck owners and women owners or intenders were the most resistant to what's going on with COVID.
Very interesting.
Changes in mobility trends have changed a little bit for intenders. About 3/4 of all intenders state they think that their needs are going to stay the same. Let's see, BEV adoption. This was a tough issue where we discovered that the desire or demand for a vehicle that requires compromise, whether it's availability of charging stations, length of time to charge, length of distance to drive, etc. The long story short is that even though there are some BEV intenders that say, because of what's going on in the world, we need to be more globally conscious, therefore I'm more determined to get a BEV. For those that were not in the EV space, really this is pretty much saying, and I'm never going to be, because I just can't deal with expensive compromises at this time.
Interesting. Cool.
That would lead us to ideal dealership, which probably isn't as interesting for this group, but that will then lead us to emotional commitment and the political questions we asked.
Excellent. Let's go to the political side of things, because I want to set the stage up for this, right? So the idea behind learning Mondays is to understand, learn about research like this, right? And yesterday, when I was watching all the disturbing scenes on TV, I was remembering the work that you did in your 2 waves, and you were one of the early data. Your data suggested that there was some disconnect and there was some dissatisfaction. So talk about the research that you did. What did you ask them, and what did you find from government action during COVID, the buyer behavior, the behavior, and along those angles? Tell us a little bit about that part of your research and set the stage up for us, and then tell us about your findings.
Sounds great. As I mentioned, we've been doing political research for decades in multiple countries, including China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, India, UK, Russia, etc. We do political research, and we felt that what we were doing with COVID, we wanted to understand what was going on in the hearts and minds of consumers when it came to their elected officials, local hospitals, local governments, federal government, and the president. And we asked a very simple question, which is, how would you rate your impression of how they're doing? And we use a scale that goes from top box 7, I love it, to delightful, then excellent. Being very satisfied is at the middle. Then it goes to unsatisfactory, a failure, and I hate it at the bottom. We have found that this scale is significantly more discriminating when people are talking about their experiences. For example, when talking about the president here in the US, people will rarely use words in their natural language saying that they believe that President Trump is either very satisfying or very dissatisfying. Often it's, I love him, or they will use language that I will not use in this presentation. And it could be best connected to, I hate it. When people talk about their spouses or their children, they rarely go to their spouse and say, Happy Valentine's Day, I'm satisfied with your performance this year. Wait, no, honey, I'm very satisfied with your performance. No, instead, they give a card or flowers. They say, I love it. And we have found that so long as we translate this correctly in different countries, this superordinal scale has a direct impact on advocacy, conquest, loyalty, etc. And in the automotive world, just as an example, new vehicle buyers, when you ask, how would you judge your overall experience with, you could see that most people love their new vehicles. In fact, almost 40% will say, I love it. And very few will hate it. For people who buy, if we put together a love index, which we do each year, it's 524. BMW 8 folks, people who buy that vehicle, really love their vehicle. And even the Chevy Cargo Express van has some people that love it as well, with a score of 203. Now, something I'm not going to get too much into, but people who own their own personal vehicles don't have a lot of love for ride-hail, which is part of the reason why ride-hail has never replaced personal vehicle ownership in any mass numbers. And when it comes to fully autonomous vehicles, US population is different than people in Brazil and India, where they're looking forward to autonomous vehicles. In the US, they're still like, I just don't trust it yet. But the US customers love the driving assist, like Smart Park, parallel parking, etc. And so I believe that fully autonomous vehicles will come quicker and actually will have a quicker adoption rate than even BEVs. So now take this and we apply it to the government and their response to COVID. This is wave one. So this is the early part. And you can see that when it comes to local health officials, hospitals, and the US government, for the most part, people are like, I'm not really sure that I like what's going on. And in fact, we see that there's quite a bit of disgruntlement that's coming. The President of the United States, actually of all the political groups we looked at, had the highest markings, and that creates a love index of 220, which, just to put it in context, is just a little bit better than the Cargo Express van. So you could see that, you know, the best government official was being trusted, loved, etc., about as much as a panel white cargo van. By the time we get to wave two, with the continuing of COVID, states talking about who's going to open up, why they're opening up, and all the fighting that was going with this, we can see that not only did the US government go significantly down, but so did the President of the United States. These are levels of hatred. These are people saying they are failures and I hate them. And even if you decide that 40% of President Trump's base would say that they love him, which is not an inaccurate statement, you could see that when it comes to the response to COVID, not even his base is giving him the benefit of the doubt. In short, the US citizen hates and sees our response as a government as either they hate it or it's a complete failure in taking care of the needs of the people. And this comes from all sorts of things, from doctors not having the equipment they need, to reports that do not seem to match, to even people who get sick and they don't have COVID, but the procedures that are happening in hospitals is causing anxiety and fear. When husbands are separated from wives at the ER, when mothers are separated from children in order to do tests, etc., this is not something that the US citizen really understands. And then when you have them quarantined for 2 months, where you have loss of job, where you have furloughs, lack of pay, and all of this insecurity of the future, and then you have something that catches national attention as the recent event. This is effectively a how big of an explosion do we want socially here in the US? And I'll take a little brief hold to see where you'd like me to go next.
This was
Ravi.
very interesting, right? And you found this about 3-4 weeks back. This was in the first month of COVID and the second few weeks of COVID, right? So I find this very interesting. When we were looking at these results, the wave 1 results as well as the wave 2 results, what I find is the gap, right? I mean, in the US government, if you go to the previous number, the US government was equally bad, right? This is minus 282. In wave 1, you had what? Minus, in the previous, Alexander? The score for wave 1? The government
The score for wave 1, as you can see.
In the previous slide? Minus
Yes.
7. Yeah, minus 7. Yeah. So when you were looking at it, you had a translation of this, right? It was more than just the it was, first of all, the local officials also not being there to lead and communicate the message also, right? This goes on to yesterday. When you bridge these findings to what is happening yesterday, there is a complete dissatisfaction, a breakdown of leadership coming in to the citizenry, right? That's what this is showing. A minus 282 score shows you that, correct?
Yes, and I wouldn't use dissatisfaction. If you take a look at those numbers, I would say that this is they're viewing it as a complete failure,
right,
and even hatred of what's going on. And this was the results back in May, in the first week of May.
Right.
You come just another week or two off of that with all of this anger and hatred and distrust and lack of security of the US government. What do you expect when these types of events happen, news focuses, and different groups try to manipulate it in a way that best asserts their narrative? When in another piece that we're doing right now, just very simply, most people in the US can say, yes, what happened was wrong. Most people in the US will say, yeah, riots are not the way to go about doing this. But because of the overwhelming hatred, this is almost inevitable in its happening.
Talk about, you did talk about the precedent a little bit, but talk about the lack of the local level here. We spoke about the presidency, we spoke about US government. This is happening at a local level also, right? Shed some light on that.
Well, it started with, we were noticing that both local officials and hospitals effectively took their marching orders from the government and other groups such as that, where they said, okay, we are going to instill draconian efforts here in the US. And so whether it is here in California where, okay, we are going to close all beaches, and then you have a local official say, well, maybe we should open it. Oh no, sorry, our governor says we're closing it, so we're going to be done. Seeing local officials come out in sweatpants and t-shirts created one imagery of people saying, how can I trust people when they're not even trying? All the way to, oh great, we've got our governor who clearly is having a haircut, and then a week later, oh wait, their hairdresser came down with COVID. Long story short, it was very clear to a majority of the US population that our government and specifically in the local officials were living a different life than the general population. And I know that people across the world have seen that, where they see that local leaders live in almost a ideal area where they don't necessarily have to live by the rules. So I go to my local hospital, and it is okay for someone who is a janitor to go into an ER to do some mopping. But it is not okay for a 29-year-old mother to go see her 3-year-old child who is had a broken arm because of a bike accident. When they see that, it creates distrust. When they see a local official who is effectively living without fear of losing their job and saying, hey, yeah, I'm in my sweatpants and you don't get to go to work and you're not going to get paid and you're going to get furloughed, not my problem. And they're saying that not necessarily with their words, but with their actions. It again fuels the flame of distrust, which is why local officials used to be the worst. They got a little bit better as hospitals were not overrun, but you could see the government and the president overall clearly were the failures.
Interesting. So yesterday I was watching the red channel, the CNN channel. Apparently it's colored red, but so Chris Cuomo, who I follow very regularly, asked a question: where are leaders? If you had a strategic vision advises a lot of companies, leaders, and corporations also, what advice would you tell local leaders right now? What should the message be? Would you have a thought on this based on this research?
They need to connect with their constituents in a very personal level. They need to reassure them. Now, because of the COVID world we live in, I do not suggest that reconnection comes with hugs and kisses at a local church. But they need to find ways to be able to personally connect. And how easy would it be just having a simple Zoom meeting with district after district in your local area? How easy would it be with social distancing areas to be able to come out and meet with people and talk with them? We are able to open up restaurants, being able to open up places for our local officials to come and meet and talk and focus on that will be essential for that. I will also add one addition because of where we're at right now. I think more than ever, our elected officials needs to be there with both those in the healthcare system, the emergency response system, like fire department, ambulance, as well as police officers, showing the good work that they're doing. A perfect example is just a day ago, a good friend of mine has a daughter and a son, and the son is at best a little bratty. Some police officers were called to a house across the street, and the older son told the younger daughter, hey, they're coming to take you away and arrest you and you'll never be seen again. And this is a young girl who has severe medical issues and actually was separated from her mother for a surgery just a week ago. And so she was really, really scared. This friend walked over to the police officers and said, hey, my daughter's scared of you guys being across the street. Could you come talk to her? And they said, of course we can. They went over, they talked, they took pictures together, and that little girl loves who the police is. Now, we know that not all police officers are good or has that time, just as we know that not all police officers are bad, as the 4 that currently have sparked this latest outrage. But I do know that connecting with the constituents in a positive way that reaffirms trust, comfort with who they are and their leadership, and reliability in what they can do for us, that's what they need to be doing, and it needs to be personal, and it needs to be advocated, which means we do need help from the media to make sure not that the politically correct messages get across, but the honest messages get across, so that you have a local official saying, hey, look, some of our cops are here under bad pretenses, and we're going to do our best to get rid of them. But most of our cops are good people. Here's an example, and we'd like to talk to you more, and let's do this, 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 and this. That's what needs to happen in very reasonable, honest, straight connection with constituents.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Hey, listen, this has been fantastic, Alexander. I know the whole panel has been waiting to ask you questions. I have had them muzzled. I apologize for that, but let's open it up for questions here. So Anil, did you have a question? I want to start off with you before I go to Dhaval's question out here. So no, guys, I appreciate it. Let us give, I wish I had a big applause audio for this. I will find it, but thank you. Some incredible findings from Alexander. So let's give him an applause and then open it up for questions.
Go ahead with Dhaval's question, okay?
Go for it. Dhaval, go ahead with your question, man.
Yeah, so I really appreciated the presentation, and you skipped over the dealership slides. So to that, my question was that, do you think in this post-COVID direct sales market, the dealerships are still relevant? And do you think that they'll continue to thrive after the lockdowns end?
So security is what's being threatened and what consumers are craving. And a brick and mortar store with a sales guy named John and a general manager named Susan, knowing those people and seeing that store can provide additional security. When we ask people what is their ideal experience, shopping at a dealer, financing at a dealer, and driving the home from the dealer was the #1 ideal way to go about doing it, which would make a company like NADA or an organization like NADA, the National Dealer Association, very, very happy. Dealers are relevant because they are a point to provide additional trust and security to consumers. Now, that doesn't mean that things don't need to change at dealerships. They absolutely do. And that doesn't mean that groups like Carvana and what Hyundai has been doing recently isn't getting people to change and think about things differently. In fact, if you take a look over here at this 37%, the ideal for luxury buyers is to do the research online, then go to a dealership and do the final stage of research, and then finance at the dealership and then drive the vehicle home. Notice that for luxury buyers, only 1% of all luxury intenders state that they would like to shop online, finance online, and have the vehicle driven to them and delivered to them. And people said, wow, that's amazing. Why? I can't believe that the luxury folks would not do that. And I said, okay, well, when was the last person you know who makes over $500,000 annually decided to buy a house simply by going on redfin.com and buying it without ever walking into it? Yes, there are a couple people that do that, but without the security and reassurance of walking to the property, checking it out, that is not what they're going to do on big ticket items. So dealerships are still relevant and will continue to be because of security.
You know, can I add one thing to that, if you don't mind, Alexander?
Go for it, man.
Of course.
You know, Dhaval, my friend actually works for dealership sales. He's one of the directors. And also another guy who trains, who I know trains dealerships. Actually, they are selling cars right now as we speak, but their changes in processes, they're not letting people come at their own time. They're scheduling. You have to schedule appointment, right? And only at that time they're giving. Otherwise, they'll say, go home. Don't come to our dealership. Right.
That's because of the COVID. But still, yes, that's correct. Absolutely. And that's what I remember Joe Ingram also told us, right? Remember Joe Ingram told us. And Mo's brother, who runs a used car dealership, also said they have to make appointments online. So I think the question that Dhaval was asking, correct. Yeah, I think your observation, Anil, is very correct. They are making appointments. I think the dealerships will still be relevant, but they have to, I think some of the interaction because of COVID will change. You have to have appointments, and then do a touchy-feely of an ideal car inside or something like that.
But I completely agree with wanting to see the car, experience it, test drive it, all those kinds of things. I think that experience can't be replaced the question is really dealerships as far as, financing and doing the paperwork and things like that. I've bought several cars in my life, and to me, that experience is only second to getting a root canal.
Or a mortgage on a house.
Right, exactly.
Right. So yeah,
I think my mortgage process was probably faster than signing the document process was faster than getting the documents for my car. So that's why this is a really interesting revelation.
Yes. Now, a side note, that doesn't mean there has to be changes. We did some generational research, which shows that about a fourth of all buyers under the age of 24 spend roughly about 5 hours trapped in a dealership. And the dealerships that do that will become irrelevant. But that doesn't mean that the dealership doesn't have the ability to be an important part of the car buying process. So this isn't to say that things are broken. This isn't to say that things need to change. And this isn't to say that they're not going to change naturally, because they are. There's a reason why people like the Tesla sales process. And there's a reason why it took Elon Musk all of about, 12 hours before he realized telling people he was going to close all of his stores was a infinitesimal, we called it delusional at its kindest. That's because being able to interact with someone at a physical place gives that security. And if you don't have it, I'm not going to buy a $100,000 vehicle on a website alone. I need a place to go. Now, that might change 20 years from now, but it's not going to change 5 to 10.
Yep. Yeah. And the traffic. Yeah, absolutely. And the experience obviously has to change in their role probably. Let's go back to these results on COVID here. I know we have a few more minutes. Any other questions, guys? I know there are some very nice.
Let me ask Alexander. It's not what you covered in this presentation. My question is, let's say I am creating a new hardware piece, right? Or a new SaaS platform. Can I come to you and say, hey, can you do a focus study on or do a group study? Because I want to make sure, before I go and start on product development, I want to do some little bit of market research with a little bit of amount of money. Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. They're experts at it. They have tremendous amount of expertise at it. Sorry, Alexander. I was an evangelist before you said that. So go ahead. Sorry.
The short answer is yes. We've been involved both with individual groups that create various products, all the way to giant clinics with OEMs, where we actually look at features, whether they are in its final design or whether it's early stages, to be able to really understand emotionally what is the impact on the consumer, which allows the group that are building it to understand everything from, is it needed? Is it something that is a security related issue that really can reinforce the value proposition of the vehicle? What's the impact of that on the consumer, which is how many times are they interacting at it with a knowledgeable instance? A lot of things we do with that, and we've been doing that for, specifically in automotive, for over 30 years.
Is there a number of group of users you take, or is it the size of the study? What is the size of your average study?
It really depends. I would say that we always target it to who you think the user will be. If you say this is a feature that we're going to try to sell to Toyota, for example, then what we're going to do is we're going to talk to folks that own or shop Toyotas. And depending on what we want to do, are we going to look at people who are owners to see how it's impacting them? Will this generate loyalty? Or are we looking for intenders to understand, is this a conquest feature? Usually we get a mix of those things. We like to also make sure that these are innovators, not just people that are buying a Toyota because they always buy a Toyota, but we want people that are usually early on buying the new iPhone, or they're early on getting the front loading washing machines rather than the top down. They're doing other innovative things in their life. When it comes to qualitative research, which we usually start at, as I mentioned that presentation we did back in 1977, we were showing how our hierarchical tandem cluster analysis could work on 2-hour qualitative interviews with sample sizes of just 24 people with incredibly strong predictability. We know that in our interview process, after about 12 to 16, we already know what the answer is, unless you have a number of different groups, like how are Toyota loyalists different from Toyota Conquest, different from Toyota, you know, that's, if we decide to add on a quantitative piece to it, we usually find that after 75, we have an answer, but politically, we like to go with about 200.
Okay. And also you guys do some on the study on the pricing, what users would buy if it's a SaaS platform, what would be the ideal cost?
Willingness to pay, willingness to, we do that, absolutely.
Yeah.
We do all that. I mean, I'll give an example that is recent, but also old. Well, the Kia Stinger that just came out, all the features that were on that was done with our analysis, which was a combination of, you know, your standard and Westendorp analysis, all the way to our own feature analysis. And we were able to come up and say, here's what it looks like. This is where you want to price it. If you'd like, I'm sure I can put together a 1 or 2 slide presentation for Ravi to be able to share with those that are interested in what those pricing pieces look like. But again, we do it all the time. The Van Westendorp is probably the most accepted, but I find it the most boring and simplistic. But at least it gives you an answer, and those answers usually get you the right direction. We do our own feature research that I would suggest, but we're willing to do either research or combination. Like I said, for Kia, we did both.
Yeah, and just it's Alexander, and it comes from a company, Sharon does that, is also an expert at it. Both of them, they have tremendous amount of expertise. Anil, seriously, I have used them on at both Ford, Hyundai, and I know a whole bunch of OEMs use them. They're, I mean, I compare them with the likes of JD Power on front-end strategy. They're much better than that. So absolutely, they do some incredible work.
Yeah, I do get some startups asking these things.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking.
Absolutely. And they're ideal to go for that. And they're very, very helpful. Alexander has been very kind to partner with me on taking their services to India. We are trying to do exactly that in India, along with for the automotive companies. But absolutely, feel free. Alexander, I'll share your email address with the team at large out here, along with I would recommend Strategic Vision in a heartbeat, not only because of the quality of their research, but more importantly, for the amount of insights they provide based on the research and their approach to it, primarily based on psychology, which is very, very powerful. It's not just things gone wrong and things gone right, but more importantly, they help you understand the underlying aspects of a purchase process, which is much more valuable than just being seeing what went wrong and improving it on what went wrong. Okay.
Thanks.
So, any other questions, guys? Anything that I missed out here? Any questions for Alexander out here? No. Before you guys go, I promised. How many of you saw the Flint, Michigan video yesterday? Did you see the Flint, Michigan?
No,
Nobody
I
has seen
not
it.
watch TV. Sorry.
Okay. So the best.
I watch a little bit social media.
What's the
so exactly, I'm going to share that. So yesterday I told you I went out, clubbed a few balls so that I took out my anger on it, and then I saw Santa Monica, which is among my favorite cities, torn down, right? But then and I was thinking about all this in terms of the place I come from in India. We call, Mahatma Gandhi and stuff like that. They changed it, right? You changed the equation. I knew the data coming out of Strategic Vision, the gaps, the between the various governments. And then I saw something that came up on my screen that absolutely blew my mind away. And this guy, I don't give away awards so easily, but this guy is my hero. So let me just pause this and hang on, let it just come up. Let it come up. I'll miss the ad out here. Just give it a minute and then I'll share my screen. Hang on. Sorry, skip ad. There you go. There you go. Hang on. Let me share my screen here. Share screen. And this guy just made my day. So I have been watching him like a dozen times and I've given him a bunch of likes. Share computer sound, share, and hopefully I can do this one. Let's see this. Hang on. Oops, what happened to sound?
Don't think for a second.
Wait.
Make sure that you got a voice. That's it. Don't think for a second. Don't think for a second that he represents who these cops are from all over the county and around this nation. We go out there to help people, not do that nonsense.
There we go.
I want to tell you, where's my man? Right there. Where's the gentleman?
Oh, I think he took off.
Okay, yeah, my man.
He took off.
Pastor Hawkins, see, I was going to tell you, we want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I was just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
So I deliberately shared this because I think this guy needs to be celebrated more than anybody else.
But
instead of showing batons and I understand discipline and stuff like that, but if you just turn your backs and say, hey, listen, I'm with you, right? Things change. And I think, I don't know, I'm not a political, I'm not getting into the political aspects of it. The data speaks for itself. There are huge gaps between performances in the government and whatever it is. But I think when you're on the ground, when you are in a local situation, leadership is about doing small things like this. Flint is not the greatest city on earth. It has just gone through a whole bunch of problems. If you go into the history of Flint, it has really a dark history behind it, right? But for a person, the sheriff department, to come out and do this and walk with them is, I think, leadership. And that's my opinion. So
it's been happening in many cities. Many cities, the same thing. It's been happening.
I think this guy is apparently,
one thing.
Yeah.
Police officers they do a lot. Okay. I understand what went happen. It's bad. I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah, please go.